Well, Happy New Year. It's almost midnight on January 6th, and we're getting ready to drop our first episode of season 2. I know that time is the most precious commodity, and we are forever grateful that you choose to spend 30 to 60 minutes of it every week with us here at Not Done. When I was a CEO, one of my strengths was iterating quickly, and I promised to bring that same approach to Not Done every week. And in season 2, we commit to new and relevant topics, to bring on even bigger guests across a wide range of topics and not just hospitality. And we also plan to hit the road, and we have some exciting visits with some high-profile public CEOs in season 2. To kick us off, we were intentional in choosing my good friend and former number 2 at Remington, Jason Reeder. Jason is one of the most talented individuals I've ever had the opportunity to work with and have work for me. And his level of charisma and caring is so deep. It's a God-given talent that he has. So with that, let's roll episode 1, season 2. Well, welcome back to another episode of Not Done. I'm Sloan Dean, and today I'm joined by a friend and a former colleague, Jason Reeder. Jason is the current Chief Operating Officer for Davidson Hospitality and was my Chief Operating Officer at Remington. So welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks, Sloan. Great to be here.
Yeah, so I guess going down memory lane, I left Remington in June. You left very shortly in July.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone listening in wants to know why.
Well, I mean, when you left, I didn't see the point of continuing to work. Right.
Yeah, I think that was a benefit when maybe I left. But, maybe for those, because we do have a good many listeners who follow both of us, maybe give a little bit of color around your reasoning for moving to Davidson.
Yeah, so truthfully, I wasn't looking. I was contacted by a recruiter. And I would just say, without going too far down the rabbit hole, I think the company, in my eyes, started to change a little bit. I think you announced you were leaving in April, if I recall, Sloan. I know your last day wasn't until June.
Yeah, I resigned in early April, and I think it got announced like late April or early May.
Yeah. So I kind of, there were just a couple different things. I will say that I wasn't running out the door, though. It's not like I was like, oh, I got to go find something. It was more of, I got contacted by a recruiter, and Davidson has one of those reputations of, it always been on my short list of companies that I would want to work with for a variety of reasons. The culture of the company, the quality of the product hotels that they oversee. As you know, Tom Gachet is a great guy. So there's a lot of just reasons behind it. So I think it was really a combination of a few things. It was kind of timing of where things were headed at the time at Remington, and also just the incredible opportunity with Davidson.
Agreed that Davidson does have a great reputation, and Tom is obviously a great leader, and so was John Belden for Tom. Yeah, and you guys just went through a recapitalization event last year. So KSL sold the company to Nautic Partners. And so I assume part of this bringing on a new COO is some of the new strategy following a recapitalization. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. I mean, I think the position was held while the sale was going on. To kind of go back in time, Nautic bought the company in November. Last year, so just over a year ago.
Got it.
And then if you go back before that, the company was for sale about 12 months prior to that. So I think the decision was made at the time, and I'm speaking just from what I've heard. Obviously, I wasn't here at the time. It was, let's get through the sale, figure where things are, and then we'll begin a search. Well, I can tell you that the search took, 6, 7, 8 monts to complete. But if you kind of take waiting for the sale plus kind of that timeline, there was also, Tom was trying to fulfill the role as CEO and COO. I think that's more of a short-term solution than long-term. I think they always knew they needed to hire someone. So once they got through the sale, then it was really like, okay, the company's going to grow. We obviously need to focus on operations. And so I think that's when the decision was made to hire someone.
Yeah. I want to dive into, you've been traveling, I think almost every week I see you or we're trading texts because you and I stay in contact. What has it been like ramping up in a new company and then doing that in the middle of budget season?
It's been a lot of work. So the short answer is July 7th was my first day, which, as you know, budget season typically begins in July or August. And honestly, I wanted to get out and see hotels at the same time of budget season. So I can tell you it was a lot of nights away from home, a lot of hours. But, as I sit here today, almost 6 months on the job, I'm thankful for what I've done because I think it's given me a platform to understand the company better, to understand where we need to make tweaks and changes going into 2026.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that 2026 will surprise folks because I've had a lot of conversations over the last couple of months And just about every operator I've had on has said this has been one of the hardest budget seasons because you have an expectation that revenues are flat to maybe up 1, 2%, and
Yeah.
expenses are still growing faster than revenues. And no hotel owner wants to hear, well, my GOP or my NOI is backing up next year. No one wants that. And so it makes for a very tough budget conversation.
It does. I understand. As an owner, I would have the same expectation, right? You're not expecting to do worse than what you did before. Basically, budgeting for a loss, right? It has been challenging. I look back; it's really been kind of in a challenging operating environment since about the summer of 23. Because if you remember back at the first quarter of 23, I think what was it, Omicron or something? The first quarter of 22 it was kind of that read thing from COVID. So we kind of those comps were really comparable. When we got to about the middle of 23 is really when it's been pretty challenging. So we're going on 2.5 years of this kind of malaise with growth. The eternal optimist in me, I do think next year will be better than what the pundits are saying. I think there's some things that when you look at job growth, you look at interest cuts, there's some things there that I'm hopeful that next year from a revenue standpoint will be much better than flat.
I don't disagree. And I think also you've had muted supply for a couple of years.
Exactly.
So, you don't really have a lot of new hotels as a headwind. We'll lapse some of the really crummy comparables starting in March and April. It seems like things really slowed down in April and started to get some easy comparables.
Agreed. And I can tell you, with the Davidson portfolio, our group pace for 26 is up double digits to 25. So that's also encouraging. Now, as you know, those things can kind of evaporate as you get into the year and where it goes. But I just think there's some fundamentals there that hopefully mean a little bit better 26 than what we thought. I heard this phrase and it tends to be true. Things are never as good as people think they are, and things are never as bad as people think they are. So I'm hoping 26 is the latter.
That's a wise saying. So I had Chris Green on the show, and the number one thing people wanted to hear was, what is it like working together? So and feel free to, absent spitting in my face, be candid. What I think the listeners would really be interested in, like you were COO, I was CEO. What was it like working with myself, and how did you find that dynamic?
So you've heard of waterboarding, right? No, so I would say this. I think that your greatest attributes, Sloan, and I mean this. Don't worry, I'll get to some bad stuff in a second. But I think one of your greatest attributes is your ability to listen, not just to listen, but to respond. I think there's a lot of people who say they want feedback, but they don't necessarily listen to it. I can think of multiple examples where you were going down a different path or direction. You asked me for my feedback. I gave you candid feedback and you changed that direction. So for that benefit, I'll say as a leader, I think that's a little bit unique. Because I think sometimes leaders already have their mind made up and they may cursory ask for feedback just to hear it and maybe just to feel like someone's giving it, but that doesn't really change anything. So that's one of the really positive things I'll say. I think you and I worked really, really well together. And in all honesty, we had some differences of opinion sometimes, but I think you and I had the respect level where we could kind of get hot with each other. And I can only think of a few times where that happened, but then cooler heads would always prevail at the end, right? Where we were like, you know what, you're right, or this is where this is going to be. So, I think when you think about the culture of Remington and where that company went and the reputation that it had prior and then where it went under your stewardship and where I think I helped and others helped, I think that says a lot about leadership style, right? Because we took a company that I honestly would have told you I probably wouldn't have worked for in the, late 2000s to, joining it joyfully in 2021. There's a lot to be said about that, and that just doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah. When we both left, I think the Glassdoor rating was like a 4.3 or 4.4. That says a lot about what we were trying to do. And the things that I appreciated about you is, one, you've got a charisma that people are drawn to that you can't coach and is innate. There are a few people in this world that have gravitas that people just want to follow, and you've got that kind of energy. But it's a sincerity in that it's a nice blend of charisma, but you're not over. There are very charismatic people that have massive egos and are hard to relate to one-on-one. I've always been impressed when we would visit hotels. You would know a lot of the staff and they would be very enamored by you. So I think that orientation towards people is a massive strength that often is not taught. It's innate. We both have this in common in that I think we're both half glass full type people.
Yeah.
And that insulates you in a very hard business. There's always something going wrong. You're always getting sued for general liability purposes. You've always got somebody quitting. And that kind of positive non-victim mentality is really important. You almost have to be like Teflon. And then I think we also shared work ethic that,
Yeah.
if we need, you and I traveled, us and Keith Olczyk were the three that traveled the most. And, it was not unheard of for you or me to be on the road 150, 200 days a year. And if that was what it took, what did surprise me when we did the Myers-Briggs, I was an ENTJ and I was 99 percentile E. You're the only person that I've met that I would say you're just as social, or in some ways maybe even more social than me, but you were not as extroverted. So I thought you were the extreme like me,
Yeah.
because I've never seen anybody be able to go, 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 and then you're still at the gym at 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
how I'm able to go, go, go. That's part of the recharge. I've never been accused of not being extroverted. However, I will say this. When I was growing up, I was extremely shy. I was a very shy child up through high school. I came out of my shell in college, and I would say pretty extroverted ever since then.
Pivoting back to the business that we're in, you and I would often reflect and talk about how, unfortunately, in third-party hotel management in the United States, there's been a bit of commoditization, a race to the bottom on fee. It's almost, what really differentiates company A from company B. How do you see that landscape now? Because you've worked for Pyramid for a long time, and then you were COO at Magna, you were COO at Remington, now you're COO at Davidson. What's your take on it?
I think right now it's as worse as it's ever been on the commoditization side, just because I think there are some owners out there, and we've chatted with some of them since I've been with Davidson even, that just feel like right now there's not a value in a different operator because the landscape is so bad. Said another way, the cost of transition out to bring in a new manager isn't worth it right now based on the current business environment. I don't agree with that opinion, of course. I think that you always want to have the best management company you can, regardless of the time or the economic cycle that we're in. But I think, part of what you have, it's hard because there will always be someone cheaper or someone willing to do it for less. Right. But the question becomes, by doing that, are you able to afford the talent and the people and the support that can really yield the best results? Because I would say, similar to a sports team, the best talent will give the best results, right? Take the Kansas City Chiefs. Before they had Patrick Mahomes, they were kind of a laughing stock, and then they built some people around them. The team didn't move cities. They had the same stadium. But what happened is they brought in really great players that made that team successful. I think it's very similar with management companies. The more talented people you have, the more successful your hotel will be. Well, if you're always racing to the bottom in fees and going to the lowest denominator and whatever's the cheapest, ultimately you won't be able to afford that talent because the top talent will command the top price. I also think one of the errors in judgment is to assume that by getting a cheaper fee, you'll save money. The only way that assumption stays true is if the revenue generation stays the same. The reality is if you go to try to save nickels, then it ends up costing you dollars. And I can tell you, and this was with Remington as well, hotel companies that are offering these easy outs, these 30-day out contracts that don't require really any teeth at all. We have general managers now asking those types of questions. The general managers want to know what the stability is of the management company, right? So, I think they're going to be less likely to get that A+ talent in GM if they know that in 30 days the management company could be gone. Because what does that really mean? It means stability for the general manager, especially when you think about the best GMs typically already have jobs, and in many cases you're asking them to move them and their family somewhere. They want to know that where they're going has a decent road to it.
I completely agree. There's definitely a balance between the extreme is the Marriott managed 30-year agreement with liquidated damages, right, uncapped incentive fees, and then there's the 30-day for convenience 1.5% base management fee with no incentive. The right answer is in the middle. And I do think that unfortunately with private equity and the roll-up strategies that are happening in some cases, that there has been every deal is a good deal. And, frankly, I told Tom and John this before. One of the things I really respect about Davidson, whether they were owned by KSL or even before Nautic Partners, is that you guys tend to be more disciplined, not doing. I think often as the CEO of a large operating company, it's almost more important the deals you say no to than the deals you say yes to.
Yeah, on that note, I will tell you just in the, call it 6 months that I've been here, I can think of at least 10, probably more deals that we've said no to. It is critical. And it's part of the consistency in the portfolio quality and product. When you decide what lane you're in, you can't be all things to all people, right? So if you end up saying, oh no, we specialize in lifestyle, but then your next 6 hotel announcements are, roadway inns and days inns that you brought into the portfolio, do you really? You can't specialize on all things. And that goes back to the talent piece as well. If you want to have the most talented people, you have to have a portfolio that they want to oversee.
Yeah. A smart person once said to me that strategy is about sacrifice. It really is true that a master of many is a master of none. Now, you guys run some mega hotels. You guys are known as the big full service resort operator. Is there a Davidson way?
Of the 85 operating hotels we have, I think we have only 3 select service, and of those 3, they're in urban locations that do over 20 million a year. So we don't typically do select service. We also don't typically do even mid-scale full service like DoubleTree. Nothing against DoubleTree as a brand. I was a GM with DoubleTree back in the day, but it's more of where is our lane. Part of it is they decided these are the types of hotels we want to run. So from there, it was being disciplined with what you bring in. Then it's what kind of support you need to run those hotels. So as an example, we have a Davidson Restaurant Group, DRG, which is our above property food and beverage team. 10 people on that team. I mean, I don't know of another organization that has 10 full-time above property food and beverage support. And it's because, we have the large resorts. We have hotels that do more F&B revenue than rooms, depending on where it is.
Right.
So when you're doing that level of revenue, it can support talent like that. So to answer your question a little more succinctly, when you strategically know what kind of hotels you're going to operate, you build an infrastructure around that allows you to operate them in a better or more advanced way, which then allows you to produce better results. We'll never be the cheapest game in town. I will never profess to you that Davidson will come in and be the lowest management fee. I can promise you we won't. What we can commit to is we'll provide the best value and can deliver because of the resources that we have.
No, that's well said. How does the portfolio stack up brand versus independent? Because you run both.
So we have 85 operating hotels today. 28 of those are fully independent.
And I think you guys years ago launched, is it Pivot? Am I getting that right?
Yep.
The independent lifestyle division. Is that run separately or is that commingled with the branded division?
So right now we have 3 verticals.
Okay.
And I'll give you a small tease. We're going to launch a 4th vertical next year. So the 3 verticals we have are hotels, resorts, and Pivot. Within each of those verticals, you have an EVP of operations. You've got, and this is another kind of differentiator, fully deployed teams, commercial, marketing, food and beverage. There's basically people that specializes in each of those verticals specifically. So there's not crossover. So said another way, like our lead salesperson, we have someone who just does Pivot. We don't have a traditional chief commercial officer. We have senior commercial people in each of those verticals. So we're not trying to be a master of all, right? We've got people that are specific to each of those. And so within each of those, that, like I said, that's the teams that are built. We are looking at, and we'll probably launch next year, a luxury division. So we've looked hard at that. People who have seen it on LinkedIn, Steve Contos, who was a longtime Marriott guy, oversaw luxury for them. He was with Marriott, I think, 25, 30 years. He's been with us for 4 years. We have him as an EVP just over this new international luxury division.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Marriott allows Ritz-Carltons to franchise. Four Seasons ever gets into the franchise business. And I don't know if there's any franchise Waldorfs. There might be. But that would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The indications we've heard, I think they're going to proceed very cautiously, but I think they might dip their toe in it at some point. I mean, if you go back 20 or 30 years, Glenn, you probably remember they wouldn't franchise a full-service Marriott hotel, right? They would only do self-service, and then every time they've kind of added a little bit more. So I guess time will tell.
Makes sense. I want to pivot a bit to leadership. How would you describe your leadership style in a few words?
Hungry, humble, and very motivated. My first job in this industry was a dishwasher at a restaurant, and I've worked my way up, worked pretty much every position, was a longtime general manager, and I try to lead the way I would have liked to have been led earlier in my career. And I remember when I was this dishwasher, there was a general manager of the restaurant. His name was Mersad, and he was a yeller. That guy would yell, like dress you up and down. It didn't matter. And I'll be honest, Sloan, I was an okay dishwasher. I wasn't great. So I got dressed down a few times about not going fast enough or getting the racks through the machine fast enough. But I remember it was a busy Saturday night and I'm, over at the dish pit doing dishes, and Mersad's running around the restaurant yelling at anyone who could come within, a couple minutes of him. And the server comes to the back, they've got their tray, they're helping to break down the tray, and I'm, taking their stuff off and putting it in the rack. And he looks at me with the driest face and goes, "Man, that guy puts the spit in hospitality." And I'll never forget that. It's like, wow, I've never heard that phrase before, the spit in hospitality. But the point of that is, if you manage that way, you can get respect when the person is right in front of you, because fear, intimidation, they're your boss, you don't want to lose your job. But the second he walks somewhere else, people were rolling their eyes, talking about him, and probably not doing as hard of a job as they could.
That's right.
What I found from working my way up is you want a leader that you'll run through a wall whether they're there or not, that they're supportive, they're motivating, There's someone that you respect and trust. So I've tried to emulate my leadership style in the way that I would have liked to have been led when I was in positions that had people like Mirsad. And if Mirsad's listening, I'm sorry, but that was a while ago. That was just much more hard-nosed.
One of the things that I've learned over time is that making associates feel emotionally safe is important. I've worked for several folks that do the opposite. And it's not motivating, and people don't want to work that much harder. And that type of authoritarian central control and command and distrusting of everyone, it erodes performance. It really does. And I think that's a great point that you call out, that the fear-based leader, you can command performance, but the minute you walk away, those people are not loyal. They also talk poorly about you and are demotivated and tend to update their resume and leave.
They do.
Talent votes with their feet. One of the things I noticed upon reflection, looking back at Remington, is where I think I was critical of you and we both got criticism, was that there's mistakes that happen along the way, and why were you not in the details of that? And I think when you're a leader of a large organization, you have to give some people autonomy, and that's how failure happens. And it's not scalable for the CEO or the COO to be involved in every single decision, nor is it efficient and the way things can operate. The reason that a lot of people micromanage is not only ego, but because they were better at the job that was before them, right? That's why they got promoted in the first place. And so they see somebody not doing it well and they step in. And part of being a great coach is you actually have to allow people to fail from time to time. And I think you and I were willing to do that, to our credit, but sometimes that was the criticism of, well, no, you need to micromanage down to a level of detail. And I think when you get into a big organization, you can't do that.
If you think about the companies where they expect that micromanagement, you're now just overpaying someone to do the job that they were doing before. So the question I would say isn't, are you so much in the details that you're micromanaging it? It's, what are you not doing now because that's what you're doing?
The kind of reactive mindset is focused on what I have right now and controlling it. And you can't control everything.
That's exactly right.
You've been COO of multiple companies. What's the biggest misconception of the COO role?
Probably the biggest misconception is that it's this glamorous job that, you fly to all these cool places.
Yeah, you just fly on a private jet.
It's funny because the reality is when the COO gets involved, it's usually a pretty big problem. If an owner wants to talk to the COO, it's not usually to say, hey, I just want to check in on you, see how things are going. It's usually because they've exhausted several different avenues and have not found a satisfaction or response, and now they want to talk to you. So as a COO, you deal with a lot of problems. I genuinely love what I do. I really, really do. I love the job.
Yeah, I have to.
Have to, because it's a grind if you don't. But I think that's the misconception, is people see the, I don't even know if I want to call it glamorous, but that style of getting to fly to all these beautiful places and go out to all these dinners and attend these conferences. But that's such a small part of the job. All the other stuff is much more of it. I'll tell you, the greatest joy to me of the job is the ability to impact culture and allow people to do more things than what even they think they're capable of. One of the greatest joys I've had in all of my career, not just when I was CEO, even when I was GM, when you can see something in someone before they can see it in themselves and say, no, I think you can do this, and this is why. There's multiple examples I can think of in my head where you give someone a chance, even if they're a little bit doubtful of themselves, and you see them blossom. That's such a cool ability to be able to shape someone's life. And the reality is, you're not just shaping their life, it's their family's life and everything else that goes with it.
I completely agree. I mean, it's been a great reflection of mine these last 6 months. And looking back, I've had multiple associates reach out, and it's the lives that you touch. It really is true that, people don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. So you're in an industry where revenues are maybe slightly down year over year. Margins are getting squeezed. How are you thinking about margin expansion in this current environment?
In a non-traditional way. One of the main things that as a group we've changed here, and it's in our operations goals, it's in our bonus plans for next year. Typically, and for good reason, hotels focus on room revenue. They focus on star data, they focus on group pace. However, the way you can really expand margin is to go look at TRevPOR, total revenue per occupied room, especially when you're running these larger hotels and resorts. How you expand margin may not be if you're somewhat a little bit at bay with the market, right? If the market's growing 2, maybe you grow 2.5, or if it's growing 1, maybe you can get to 2. So you've got a little bit of a ceiling on your growth. However, what you don't have growth on is that closet that was dead space that you decided to turn to a coffee shop that didn't exist before. And now that just made you $600,000 this year and $300,000 in profit, which added $3 million in value. One of the things we focused on is ROI projects. To our owners' credit, we have a lot of owners that you show them the ROI, they'll put the money in. No matter how great we are, I don't think you're going to take a standard hotel and have room revenue go up 8% year over year. However, total resort revenue can go up 8% if you find it through other channels.
Yeah, I think that's well said, particularly the types of hotels you're running,
right?
Where there's huge F&B upside and ancillary revenue all around.
I'll give you an example, and I cannot take the credit for this because it truly was not my idea, but this is how creative this GM was. It's a historic hotel, and a lot of people know the hotel.
Okay.
Guests were always asking about, love to get a behind-the-scenes tour and see how the kitchen works. I mean, this has 800 employees at this hotel, right? So I think it's 20 F&B outlets maybe. He came up with a full tour that they charge for, but it involves a full back of the house tour. I mean, it's like 6 hours with the GM. I mean, who ever heard of this, right? This year. So we got 2 weeks left. They're going to make $400,000 on back of the house tours.
I love that.
And here's the thing. We've done measurements. All the guest satisfaction scores have gone up in the groups that have done that. And because that's the secret sauce. You're not feeling nickel and dimed as a guest. You're happy to spend that money because you're on vacation because of the experience. You never would have gotten that experience anywhere else. Most hotels don't even offer that. But the ability to have a greater experience and learn more about this historic hotel while paying a little bit of money adds up.
I love that. I love those unique ways. I remember when I was on the asset management team at Ashford before I was CEO of Remington, the Courtyard San Francisco that is now the Clancy, the GM at the time, there was union construction next door, and she charged the construction workers for just during the daytime to use the public restrooms, I think $10,000 or $15,000 a month. And, the only cost is the water bill. And I was like,
right.
Genius, because they didn't want to use the porta potties, so they could come in a side access and use the bathroom, and it was like a $10,000 or $15,000 a month fee.
That's brilliant.
How are you guys thinking about AI? It's getting a lot of attention. I would argue it has not impacted hotel operations in a meaningful way. You have some software providers selling it. You see some partnerships at the big OTA level. Consumers are using AI now to do trip planning and inspiration. But on premise, at least before I left Remington, there was not a lot. How are you guys thinking about AI?
We've got a group called Strategic Operations, StratOps Group, and it's a group of really young, smart people that do all kinds of stuff. Picture the Remy group on steroids. It's about 15 people that do all kinds of things. They run the budget process. They do a bunch of analytics. We have a few of them that have formed like an AI committee to look at different ways we can use AI. I'll give you a couple of examples of stuff we've already done, which is amazing. It's crazy to think about. A hotel that's struggling in guest service. Copy and paste 6 months of guest comments and say, give me the top 5 things we need to work on at this hotel to improve guest service scores. It'll tell you, here's the top 5. Right. Now, think of old school, how long that would take. Every guest review for 6 months, and AI gives it to you in about 25 seconds. I think one of the challenges that we all face is part of what we sell ourselves on is in the hospitality business is we're a service, people-based industry. And we can't lose sight that this is still a people business. One of the things that AI that I haven't seen yet is very good at is tone.
I think that's where the argument against a lot of chatbots are, right?
Exactly.
You can feed it an FAQ, but you can't teach it empathy.
Exactly right. But that's where you lose when you talk about the connection with the guest and how do you make that happen. The reality is think about your favorite restaurant you love or your favorite retail store. It doesn't really matter where. One of the reasons you like it is you feel like there's individualized service catered to you. It's something that really feels like it's genuine hospitality that's tailored to your needs. I don't think AI has that ability yet. So I do think there's a lot of room to improve in terms of some back office stuff. But I think the other piece of it is you can't lose your voice. The one thing you don't want to have in service is robotic service. Organizations that are tempted because it can save money and AI never gets sick. You hear all those different things. AI never gets sick, but it also won't hug you when you're crying, right? So you got to have that empathy side too.
Yeah. There's definitely a balance. Yeah. Maybe as things get more advanced, that changes. But I agree. There's probably a lot more back of house opportunity than guest facing. You had mentioned there were maybe a couple others that you guys are testing. If you want to share any other examples.
I would just say it's really on the data analytics side. So things that we would have taken 3 or 4 reports to do, we have AI. But right now what we're doing is we're having AI analyze the data, and then we're analyzing the data to make sure it comes up with the same things. So there's labor analysis or different things. It's interpretive. It's all back of the house, but it's interpretive data analysis that would, in theory, save a lot of man hours, provided that their hypothesis is correct.
Now, you grew up through operations. You were GM of multiple hotels, different markets. Do you think AI changes the role of the general manager? And if so, how?
I think it will, and I think we don't know all of it yet, but I'll tell you one really quick thing. I heard this stat the other day, and I couldn't believe this. If you're under the age of 18, you're no longer using Google to search. You're using AI.
Right. Yeah.
So
the boys, they use ChatGPT.
So that's what I mean. So right away, as a general manager who's running a business, I need to understand how I can make sure that when someone puts in, if I'm running a full service hotel in Atlanta, Georgia, and someone says, what full service hotel in Atlanta, Georgia, I need to figure out how I can get picked, because Google kind of got a little bit greedy, right? They didn't really have competition. Today, when you search for Google, you got to get through all the sponsored crap first, and you got to get down to where the actual search results are. Right now, it's more pure search through the chat GBTs of the world. And I was a general manager. What you really got measured by was guest service versus the brand. So if I was running a Marriott, where do we rank versus all the other Marriotts? But it was an internal report that if you didn't work for Marriott, you didn't know. You didn't know if the hotel I was running was in the top 10% or the bottom 10%. With social media now AI, if you say, send me a recommendation of all hotels with at least a 4.5-star rating, guess what? If you don't have the service scores, you don't have the reputation, you're not going to get in that search. So service is very front facing now. So the ability to drive service scores is also incredibly critical. And I think that becomes even more critical with Chat GPT and other AI forms.
I agree, particularly as maybe AI breaks down loyalty walls. Right now, a lot of people make a booking decision based off of a brand flag or loyalty program. I think in the future, where AI breaks down information barriers and the younger generation is not as brand centric, that unique experiences and amazing service is going to be that much more important. Now, I always like to touch on stress management. People look at someone like you and like, how does he manage that? You've got a family, you're traveling all the time. How do you balance it? And what are some unique things you do?
Quality time is important. So when you have the time to be around your family, be present, that's really, really important. I will say I do still go to the gym in the mornings when I'm at home. That's part of how I revive and refresh. Being present when you're there is important. I think not taking life too seriously is also really important. The things that cause us daily stresses in our life. I heard someone say this one time, and it's so true. You're never going to see on a tombstone, I wish I'd made one more meeting.
Yeah.
It's not that important, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So having a perspective in life that says, yeah, these things aren't going right, but I will tell you that having that perspective helps keep you fresh. And I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, I was in London traveling, and I had my luggage stolen, and I had my passport. Luckily, I had my wallet, my phone in my pocket, but everything else was gone. And there was a period of time, you like to think that when something like that happens in your life, that generally people step up. Called the police 3 times, they never came. We had luggage tags. We tried to go find luggage. Anyway, none of it works out. But then you're calling the embassy to get an emergency passport. Hey, I need to send you these 5 forms you need to fill out before you can apply. You have to get an appointment, and they're telling you, oh, that appointment will be 3 to 5 business days. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm trying to get home. Those are the types of things that put life in perspective. I had a night where, I wear contacts. I had no contact solution. I had the same clothes I'd worn the day before. When I got through all that, going through that experience for a couple of days, all right, so we're off $100,000 in GOP. I think we can resolve it, right? So just having a fresh perspective about life and the importance of it, I think is really the key. And for me, and I know it is for you too, it's going to the gym. That's my therapist. That's my reset. When I go there, I put music in, I work out, I feel so much better.
I do think that makes a huge difference. You've got to have something consistent, whether it's eating healthy, making sure you get enough sleep, and definitely fitness. And as we get older, it even is that much more important.
Oh, for sure.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. We always like to wrap up with what I call rapid fire. So no right or wrong answer, just a fun way to know a little bit more about you and how you think. So favorite hotel amenity and why?
Water. I'm not, I am not a snobby guy. I eat Taco Bell. So so I'm not this snobby person. However, spring water versus purified water. Good water is really, really important. There's nothing you put in your body more than water. Mm-hmm. The very best thing I can have in a hotel room is and I drink a lot of it too. A couple bottles of water. Not one bottle that's 6 ounces either. Water is by far the number one thing.
Best operator you ever worked with and what made them great?
Ooh. Of course, now I'm thinking about it because there's different courses of so you're talking about like a person themselves, right? Or a company?
Yeah, a person. Yeah.
I would tell you that, as I was growing up in the business, there was a guy named Jim Dina, who was the chief operating officer at Pyramid Hotel Group, and he was a GM for a long time. I remember we were transitioning a hotel in San Diego. He was there 15 years before, and we had gone there to kind of transition. He goes, oh, is that the hotel when you walk in, there's a vending machine to your left? something it describes the whole lot. And in my head, I'm like, wait, was there a vending machine on the left? Like the guy just had a photographic memory. He knew his numbers. I learned so much about the business from him because he was very tactical in his approach, but it also could think big picture. So Jim Dean.
Favorite book?
Well, I'd like to tell you I've been reading more, but unfortunately I haven't read a lot in the last 6 months. I'll tell you what I really like though. Have you read Shoe Dog about the Nike founder?
I haven't. I've heard positive things about that, but I've never read it.
That was an exceptional book that I read probably 2 or 3 years ago.
I'll add that to the list. I just read, this is called Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick, and it was recommended by my MIT professor. And it is basically how AI and humans will coexist. It's a very recent book, obviously, because of the technology.
Yeah.
And it's the only really useful AI book I've read. It's called Co-Intelligence. And it's written from a business perspective.
Right.
So it's not like up here in the clouds
Right,
type
right.
perspective. What's a quote or philosophy that you live by?
You can't be great at something if you don't truly love it.
What's a small operational change that you made at some point, but it delivered a huge result?
Well, this is back in the day, but adding bottled water to the room goes back to the water thing. I was running a 300-plus room Marriott at the time. We would get complaints because remember how Marriott did the small little bottles of water by the coffee?
Yeah, the little minis. Yeah.
Get complaints about it all the time. So I don't remember if we did Fiji or we did a premium water. I think we did it for $5 a bottle, which was expensive back in the day. That sounds like a bargain in today's terms. But we converted I want to say $500,000 in revenue in the year we did that. At the time, it was more groundbreaking. Now it's a lot more common.
I remember when we were running Lakeway Resort, which is a hotel on Lake Travis in Austin, and you get a ton of families.
Mm-hmm.
And we put full-size trash cans in the closet, and it actually helped housekeeping productivity and cleanliness massively. Guest scores went up because people are there with their kids, and they don't want to hoard trash, but those little mini trash cans can't hold, like if you got a family with 3-4 kids. It was amazing how just putting a full-size trash can in the room made a difference. What's one unpopular opinion that you believe in and would defend?
I feel like everyone's all in on AI. I'm more of what I had said, where I think there is uses to it, but we need to be careful about the humanistic approach. I think having a little bit of that old school mentality about making sure we keep the service element is probably a little less popular these days.
Well said. Well, we wrap every show asking our guests to close us out with what you're not done with. So, Jason Reeder, what are you not done with?
I'm not done with a lot of stuff. I'm not done making memories with my family and traveling. That's one of the great joys I have as well, is seeing new places. Not done working out. Got to keep doing that. It keeps my sanity. And what I'm really not done with is having fun and enjoying what you do. Life is too short. If there's anything that I've learned through these years, it's you can go anywhere and make more money and maybe have a better title. But at the end of the day, what's your quality of life look like? Are you really enjoying what you're doing? Because at the end of the day, time is the most precious commodity any of us have.
Yeah, it's a fixed amount that we all get. So thanks for being here.
So great catching up with you as always.